Welcome to Universal Basic Kalshi, guys. The gang's all here. Amir, you put on your good black undershirt for us today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always
Great
fun.
shirt.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're wearing
I like
you're rocking pink.
I am rocking pastels.
And I haven't changed my shirt in a week, so
Um, McKenna, no one's going to comment on your clothes.
but that's a
So,
nice frog in the background.
Thanks. It's a different frog than last time. So I've got
that's not the that horrible MAGA frog, is it?
Pepe.
that.
Pepe's
Pepe.
It looks like Pepe a little bit. That's a
Oh,
good
do you have
call
a
out.
Pepe in your background?
He's not. There's only one frog that I disapprove of, and it's Pepe. Otherwise, I'm a frog supporter, frog lover.
I also love frogs. Is that Kermit?
No, it's just a frog.
Oh.
I'm sure this is making really good audio. It's just a regular frog.
Yeah, people want to hear about your stuffies. All right. So we want to talk today a bit about a topic that we've touched on at a number of different streams, which is political bias in the markets and understanding it and as an avenue to value. So Amir, why don't you lead us off by talking about the leading study of Polymarket bettors and just kind of what their biases are, what the demographics are, and how that we'll connect that to betting opportunity in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So Polymarket is Polymarket, Kalshi, all these prediction markets. They've it's lightly researched so far, but a recent Archive paper was done. It's not yet been peer reviewed, but it essentially encapsulated 1.8 million different Polymarket bets and showed how political influence or political views bias or actually influence their betting habits. And it shows, and Oxford actually did I guess, an overview of this study and show that the majority of these bettors are suffering, I'd say that word correctly, from wishful thinking bias, meaning they want to bet on stuff that they would like to actually happen, right? And so people got it.
No, well, let's just break this down for a second. So the data is showing that Republicans are more likely to bet for positive Republican outcomes and
Correct.
Democrats
Yeah.
more. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's going to be two things that we're going to need to unpack there once we understand that one. So we could talk about like the heuristic bias that underlies that, but just straight up what we're saying, Mets fans tend to bet on, their players winning the MVP or Cy Young Award. That's the gist of it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it would be one thing if it was like Mets fans who are familiar with baseball, maybe knowing their team well, know that they will lose to X, Y, and Z team. They don't even bet that way. So most people on Polymarket, Kalshi predicted won't bet that way. They'll actually only bet when it comes to their team winning.
So they concentrate. So we're seeing sort of different effects in the data. So one is you're more likely to bet for something that you want to happen.
Correct.
And you're more likely to focus on a market that's centered around your frame of interest.
Frame of interest within yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that has a lot of relevance to where sports gamblers go wrong. Okay. And what are the demographics? I mean, what are the demographics of Polymarket players versus Kalshi and predicted players?
Well, the overall consensus is between the prediction markets. There's no actual data between the two, but it's essentially 70% male across the board within these prediction markets, mostly males under the age of 45, right? So you have young individuals. And then also something that kept coming up within this research article was that a lot of these individuals were like crypto nerds or crypto adjacent, I guess, investors. And they do skew libertarian or right leaning, and the rest of them being centrist. And it's essentially they encapsulate this entire prediction market with a lot of money.
So the people who play Kalshi, Polymarket, and predict it are disproportionately male.
Correct.
Disproportionately young, politically libertarian. So which is going to overlap a lot with alt-right, largely American.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then do we have any sense? I guess not. There is some data, am I right, that there are some differences that Polymarket, that actually I think Predicted sort of had the highest success rate in predicting outcomes, right?
Yeah.
With
So
Polymarket at the
Predicted,
bottom.
correct. Polymarket, I believe, 67% accuracy. Kalshi was a little bit above that, and then Predicted was 93% accuracy. And what the researchers essentially concluded is that the more, essentially, the more diverse a prediction market is, the more accurate it's going to be. And so, actually, the number of prediction market is more homogenous, politically speaking, then it would actually be less accurate due to the wishful thinking bias.
Okay. So the way I would interpret that, just from a social science perspective, is that Republicans, Democrats, right, left, whatever, Mets fans, Yankee fans are equally likely to fall prey to pro-Met, pro-Yankee bias, pro-Democrat, pro-Republican bias.
Yeah.
But so if I had a sports prediction market that was dominated by Mets fans are going to make lower quality predictions on Mets games, right? Because they're going to have a pro-Met bias. So if the point of the market, and actually, as we've mentioned before, the head of Polymarket has sort of argued that one of the virtues of the markets is their quality in predicting outcomes, even though that's not clearly how they're making their money. They're making their money on making markets. But the point would be that the more diverse you have a greater diversity of people who have different pro A, pro B, pro C biases, and that they're going to wash out, right? So if you have an equal number of Mets fans, Yankee fans, White Sox fans, Dodgers fans in the markets, then their biases in favor of their particular home teams are going to wash out. And overall, we're going to get to, the right accuracy of predicting the outcomes of games. Okay, that makes sense to me. I would also draw, I don't know if you think this is fair, I would draw some inferences from the higher quality, from the higher rate of success in predicted markets, which is that predicted might have more diversity in the market, since we
Correct.
said that diversity is to accuracy. And now, is there any signal in the data about whether right-leaning people are more likely, like more susceptible to this bias? Like, are they worse? Because, Democrats, lefties always want to think that they're smarter and better. So are we less susceptible to this?
Yeah, I'd call it a signal and not necessarily like an overt statement of it, because essentially what the researchers point to is that right-leaning individuals will listen to Fox News, whatever else that they listen to. Left-leaning individuals listen to MSNBC, and also whatever they listen to, and essentially the draw or the influence that those have is essentially around the same, or with marginal differences.
Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, so Mike, having talked bets with you for 7 or 8 years, I feel exploiting this bias has been the main way that you've made money. It's not the only way, so I'm sure you have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to dovetail on your talking about the different markets. So Polymarket does have that lowest rate of accurate prediction. And I think that has to do with the fact that in Polymarket, the demographic necessarily has to be familiar with crypto and have an affinity with it and know how to process transactions in terms of it. And a lot of people who are interested in crypto, like Amir has pointed out, they're libertarian or libertarian adjacent. So I actually think that's what's driving the lower accuracy in the Polymarket
Oh, I
market.
didn't know this. Wait, did Polymarket transactions transacted in crypto?
Yes. And it's
Oh, I
not
actually didn't know that.
and
Not
it's not
all of them.
entire well, when I was doing it a few years ago, and Amir, check me if this is wrong now, it was not entirely easy to load crypto to your account or know how to trade in terms of it. And I'm a reasonably smart person who has somewhat of an affinity and knowledge of crypto. And I found that challenging somewhat. Has that
Well,
changed?
this data is slightly dated, so it's a little laggy. So if it's the case that Polymarket at its inception was principally transacted in crypto, that it's easier now to transact in dollars, but that would make sense that you'd get an overrepresentation of crypto bros. What do we call such folks?
Crypto
Crypto
nation.
hose.
Crypto hoes?
Crypto hose.
Sure.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay. But Mike, that's animated a lot of your bets, right? Is your sense that right-wing types are overweighing the possibility of outcomes that they.
Yes, that's basically the gist of it. And I think, primarily it has to do with the educational and occupational roles that people occupy generally, if they're Democrat or Republican. So, of course, the education rate among liberals and people who are left leaning is much higher. The bachelor's degree attainment level, I think there's like a 20-point difference. And they're also more likely to work in fields where they would be what Peter Drucker called knowledge workers or symbolic analysts. So they're already familiar with the kind of analytical thinking necessary to make more accurate predictions. So I think people on the left, even though Amir says there's some ambiguity in the data, if I'm doing a qualitative theoretical analysis here, I think they're still more likely to make accurate predictions, whereas Republicans don't necessarily have the analytical tools or experience, generally speaking, to make the most accurate predictions. So that's, in my view, a very exploitable, failure mode on people, right wing people making bets.
I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know that I can get a definitive answer to this, but I have a strong sense. So what you said is, I heard that differently than I've heard it in the past. Do you think, rather than ask you a question, I actually don't think that college-educated people are, by virtue of their college education, less susceptible to wishful thinking bias. So just right to define this, it's that our desire for an outcome is leading us to think that it's more likely to happen than it actually is. Okay. And actually, I think, Mike, this was our first conversation on the podcast, was how actively we work to combat that individually. But why would college education make us less likely? Less likely to fall susceptible to that. I can come up with plenty examples of, and I interact with lots of liberals. I don't interact with a lot of right-wing types, of people saying things, and I'm just like, well, that's what you wish. That's what you want to happen. You want Trump to be, convicted at his impeachment hearing, but it's not going to happen.
I'm with you. I mean, of course, like left and right wing people can have this wishful thinking bias, but the way I think of this is left wing people or people who are liberal and educated will still attempt to model the problem first. Now, their bias may enter, but I don't think that Republicans even attempt at such a high clip to model the problem. And what do I mean by model the problem? I mean, consider relevant data, statistics, maybe look at, arbitrage and pricing inefficiencies between markets. I don't know that a significant majority or a significant portion of right-wing bettors are even capable of beginning to build a model, right?
All right. I'm going to ask McKenna, because McKenna's life experience, without going into exquisite detail, McKenna's probably interacted with the greatest diversity, ideological diversity of anybody here. Do you think what Mike's saying is true? Do you think that, so I'll summarize it as, left-leaning folks, by virtue of their education, are better able to or more likely to check their heuristic bias than right-wing types?
Well, I said they would begin with a model. I would still say they're more likely to check their biases, but my main focus here is that they're going to start analytically, whereas Republicans will not necessarily start analytically.
I don't mean check their bias in the woke, check your privilege type sense. I mean check their heuristic bias.
Yes.
So I'm weighing this event as 60% likely to happen. Am I just weighing it I think Kamala Harris has a 60% chance of winning the election. Is that really what's supported by the polling data, or is that just being influenced by what I want to happen? Okay. But right. That you think, but that, you think they're more likely to approach it as an analytical proposition, or to at least be aware of the heuristic bias, right?
So
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that?
No,
I think that's it.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
All right, McKenna, what do you think on that?
So I actually have a different diagnosis for this that's going to be less satisfying because it's less salacious. But a side story that I think is important here is that retail trading generally, so trading of stocks that's not done by a bank, that's done by individuals, is up almost tenfold since before COVID. So there's this whole new class in the past 6 years of people who are largely male, largely very online, and are now participating in trading, whether that be stocks or crypto. And now, of course, this kind of predictive market or different kinds of online gambling. So I think the rise in retail trading, I have no way of confirming whether this is true, but I think it's definitely correlated and from the same pool of people that are the new retail traders. And this class of retail traders is, I mean, studies have shown they score less than random on basic tests about financial literacy. Like they are gambling, they are using the stock market as gambling. And I think that they're using predictive markets as gambling as well. So Amir already said it. People don't, even if the data points to it, people don't want to bet against their home team. When you're gambling, you want to bet for the things that you want to happen, even if that's not logically sound. So that's my analysis on what's going on here.
So
There's
your
one-
take is that the main bias in the market is that it's populated by compulsive gamblers who don't really think at all about what they're doing, or don't think very much. They just wish for outcomes.
Maybe an overstatement, but yes, I think so. I think that there's some sort of new, highly online group of people. They tend to hang out on certain trading forums that are not particularly well educated on these issues.
All right, so that is, that's the Horahan, the Mike Horahan hypothesis, is that the main thing he's doing is exploiting, I'll be kind, to uninformed people in the market, which is really interesting because the information that's available to even a casual bettor is better than it's ever been in human history. So you could go from 0 to, pretty good almost immediately. And that's true in a lot of things. So like when I started playing poker seriously probably 25 years ago. The information out there was good. It was available. You had to read books. I could be interacting with an AI that's running, game theory optimal poker for a few $100 tomorrow. You could get to be a great poker player immediately. And I would say when I go out and play poker, that the percentage of people who are okay has somewhat increased, but there are still an incredible number of people who are throwing their money away, which is shocking to me. And the people who are stupid hypothesis resonates with me a little bit. Mike, sorry, you're too modest to boast. What are you up for the year?
I'm up in 2.5 months, 220%.
Yeah, so Mike's up 220%. I think I'm up 70% for the year. I mean, I've never come close to having a losing year in a prediction markets.
Never. No, I mean, I think about that too, Evan. It's like every year I'm thousands plus at least. And that's, before the podcast when I wasn't paying as much attention to markets. I mean, it's shocking in a way.
Yeah. So it's just like, like in our last episode, like we discussed, okay, I have a free roll on Trump. He either doesn't run and I win a little bit of money, or he wins and I win a lot of money. And like, there are lots of opportunities like that. And, I mean, not everything comes in, but I've won a lot of them. I mean, I'll be surprised if we lose our bet on Iran becoming a democracy. Like,
There's just no way. I mean, and listeners, you can still go buy 91 cents to know. I mean, it's a great deal. You won't get that in the market. So
now there is no data to bear on this. Okay, but I provisionally there are clearly is a significant number of people who are playing this without significant information, and it's going to be hard to precisely define that. All right, but let's say that people, let's ignore that for a second. So McKenna, still answer my question. Do you think that Mike is right that college educated folks are more aware of heuristic biases and therefore likely to approach a decision more analytically than right-wing folks?
The two types of people, college educated people and Republicans. I
There are some college educated Republicans. I've read about them in the paper.
There's a lot. Yeah, of course.
uh, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm not trying to have a cop out answer when I say I don't.
Well, no, you can't know. You can't know for sure. But wait, you've interacted with folks. Well, actually, you've interacted with a lot of neurodivergent types in some of your environments, right? Actually, which
There's
I
some
identify.
present in this room, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, you and I do. So that's interesting. Now, actually, I think neurodivergent types are very likely to lean libertarian, in part by their genetic predisposition. Okay. Amir, do you have a take on this?
Yeah, there was one data set about Predict It, and essentially 2024 Kamala Harris supporters did overestimate her chances of winning the election. So, I mean, I'm not sold on the idea that maybe left leaning individuals, who are more educated might be going off of more educated assumptions when they're in the prediction markets. I think the wishful thinking bias transcends politics and transcends education to an extent.
If I could, I'd just like to say two biases that I'm always trying to check myself for are my doomer bias and my
Share
smart
that
people
one.
bias. I mean, I look like even in our last episode when you asked me what's your gut, is Trump going to declare? I said, of course he's going to declare, right? But then you kind of checked me on that a little bit. That was my doomer bias operating, right? And when it comes to the smart people bias, this is especially important for people who listen to this because I'm hoping, we're a little bit better than average at predicting. You can't always think through propositions in terms of what would be analytically correct, what would smart people assign the probability of this proposition. You have to be thinking about what kinds of irrational factors are influencing the market price. So those are two that I'm always trying to check. And I think it's important, that you're pushing on this question because, of course, left-leaning people are susceptible, and it's important for you as an individual trader to know where your biases are and continually check them.
So I really encourage folks to go to a website called the Decision Lab, which has a list of heuristic biases to which people fall prey. Now, it's interesting. I don't think doomer bias is actually prevailing bias. I think I share it. I just think you mean you're pessimistic. I
Yes,
would just say you're
by
rational.
nature, right? Yeah. The line is blurred, especially in the Trump era, but yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be worried about the world. I mean, I don't think being worried about global warming or the war in Iran or authoritarianism, the rise of authoritarianism in the United States is doomerish. I just think it's rational. But so I actually think the more prevailing heuristic bias is an optimism bias. I think most people are inclined to believe that the world is going to work out. It's a lot of evidence for just world hypothesis. It's part of what drives religious attitudes is that, people want to believe that the world operates justly, as opposed to the sad fact that sometimes it's luck that's just driving the system. And, it's luck that I was born where I was born and, bad luck. I got nice parents, you got crappy parents, but that doesn't reflect on you in any way. It doesn't really reflect on me. I just got lucky. Okay, so I want to go back to Amir's thing. Kamala Harris. Amir, you're not going to trump her name, are you?
No pun intended on that one.
Yeah, I think the evidence that Amir cited jibes with my experience 100%. Everybody. So we moved my family, my wife and daughter and I moved from a right-leaning community in 2019 to a very left-leaning community where we live today. I have plenty of negative things to say about both sets of people, but I like where we live more. Everybody here told me that Kamala Harris was going to win. She was running a great campaign. They were enthused by it. And I'm just going to say, okay, Amir, McKenna, do you remember Donald Trump's debate with Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Yeah.
It was epic.
Okay. It was, I thought, the worst, most offensive performance I'd ever seen in my life. I thought he would get, when we were talking about approval ratings, I would be like, there won't be 2 people left in America that would vote for him. And, by many, many surveys, he was thought to have won the debate. Okay. So I just think people see what they want to see or what they're programmed to see. It's just very hard to see it. Do you remember? So you would have been young. What did Mir? You would have been
12.
Yeah.
12?
No, I was in middle school. I believe it was in 6th grade. Yeah. So it was.
Okay, so you were 13. Oh, thanks for correcting me.
No, I think less than,
God.
what, you've been 11 or 10 if you were in middle school, right? No? Oh, well, I got left back, maybe. Never
I
mind.
got
Go
left
ahead.
back too. I got left back 1 year.
What?
Yeah, I got left
You
back.
got left back?
Yeah. Well, I didn't speak no English when I first came to the United States. So
Oh, I see.
it was a kindergarten,
great.
1st grade thing. But no, I remember sitting in front of the TV and being outraged at Trump while also thinking, wow, the "you'd be in jail" comment was, it's kind of a burn.
Hmm.
And
McKenna,
really,
what did you think at the time? I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry.
Yeah. One last thing is, like, I really thought that debate was like the establishment versus pissed off Americans. And that's why the pissed off Americans largely supported Trump in 2016.
McKenna, what did you think at the time?
I must have been a senior in high school, and it would have been the election. I was just barely ineligible to vote. So I was 17, would have been turning 18 a month later. But I remember watching that and just thinking, it was just so impossible, right? It seemed like a movie, and it was funny, because there was just no way that he was going to win. And in fact, I like to tell the story of my family. We ended up throwing what was the world's worst victory party on election night, because we were just so certain. It was that shocking.
Yeah, Mike, so this goes back to, I don't see it. I mean, look, anybody out there, if you don't want to be this person, go by Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Okay. And you could go, if you don't want to have to read an incredibly great 500-page book by a Nobel Prize winning economist, that's too much. Even though, by the way, everybody in sports reads that now. Everybody in sports analytics reads that. You could go to the Decision Lab and you could go through a list of 25 or 30 heuristic biases that they have. And in 2 hours, you can more or less be an expert in it. I actually can't imagine putting money into one of these markets without having a reasonable understanding of that. And, I see it in poker. I see people make decisions and they're just like, oh, I don't know. They'll say, oh, I put you on ace king. You assessed the situation and you reached a near certain conclusion about what specific hand. I mean, you ask me that, I'll be like, well, I think it's reasonably likely that he has, either ace king, ace queen, aces, kings, queens. Maybe there's a little bit of king queen in there, king queen suited. There are 14 combinations of ace king, 6 combinations of. I mean, that's what you're going to get from me, and then it's going to turn over and it's going to be somewhere in my probability range. And then, if somebody turns over 6-8 or something like that, I'll be, oh, well, I didn't have that in my range. And then I have to rethink my thought process. Now, anybody could reach that level of sophistication, 2 hours after listening to this podcast. And I don't know. I know a lot of college educated people. I know a lot of people who went to Harvard. I don't hear them do it. My best. Sorry,
was
my
gonna
best friend. He's an agent. He plays sports. He went to Harvard. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't speak this language at all. He would laugh at this. Now, I'm sorry, Mike. You were
I was going to say there was something in your response that was operating as smart people bias, but now I can't remember what it was. So yeah.
well.
Oh,
So
that's what I was going to say. So your position is that, somebody who's relatively uneducated and hasn't worked in professional fields could go do some research, basically get up to par with us. I think that's smart people bias operating. I think people who don't have a robust education, can't spell heuristic, wouldn't know what that means, could study that paper for 8 hours and not come away with the same conclusions that smart people would.
So I would say it more modestly. I think there's, the pathways to success are uncertain, but the pathways to failure are certain. So if all you're going to do is come and start playing Kalshi and you're just going to say, oh, well, I like the Lakers to win. I mean, it's not going to do it. Like, you're not going to have an edge over anybody else who's playing that market. But you could say, hey, you might just be predicting the Lakers to win because you're a Lakers fan. So you could eliminate some of those heuristic biases by knowledge of them. Even not being aware of them doesn't completely eliminate them, but at least you can think through whether you're doing that. So I don't think that would, if somebody educated them about heuristic biases, would put them on level with a reasonably sophisticated investor. But I think it would, keep them from making a lot of mistakes that are certain
That it
mistakes.
would, yes. But if the person was, obviously the learning curve would be a lot steeper for somebody who was coming in with lower education and without professional symbolic analyst experience. So, most of those people are going to have, and in the aggregate, a right-leaning bias. So their learning curve is always going to be steeper than it would be for somebody on the left, and therefore makes it less likely that they would arrive at accurate conclusion.
Okay. Maybe I agree. Maybe I don't. I don't know. It doesn't matter to my ultimate conclusion, which is when I talk to human beings, I hardly ever talk to anybody who has read Thinking Fast and Slow or thought about heuristic biases. I mean, I do think confirmation bias has now entered the vernacular. So I think people are aware because they're on Facebook or Instagram or whatever their social media is, that they're all in bubbles and that they're seeking out information. That doesn't keep them from attempting to get information from other sources or to interact with other sources. And, part of what we've tried to do here is construct a space in which, like, we're trying to have tendrils out into the universe of different thoughts. So, from my standpoint, so I always say, like, I always want to have a theory of the case. And my theory of the case of why we should bet is precisely that there's a lot of people who aren't. So there's a lot of people that, as McKenna said, aren't thinking at all. So I'm going to outcompete them. And then of the people who are thinking, a lot of those people aren't making themselves aware of heuristic biases. So you might be right, Mike, that the non-college educated people who attempt to make themselves aware of heuristic biases don't do it as well as the college educated people who do it. But since the share of people who are doing it is so small, it doesn't matter. And so then I'm agnostic as to, I mean, as we discussed, I now am free rolling on Donald Trump, being the Republican nominee in 2028. I mean, going to jump off a bridge if that happens. But I mean,
I do it anyway.
yeah, right.
Right.
From a betting standpoint, I mean, I'm not going to ignore it just because it's not the outcome that I favor. And I think just being aware that this market contains lots of people who have a political ideology that leads them to favor certain outcomes, and it doesn't matter what that outcome is, I can now go in and I can say, hey, why is this trading at, 25% when I think 25 cents when I think it's like a 2% proposition. And that's kind of what I think we've done for a long time.
Amir, what do you have to say?
I don't know. I'm still of the thought that people are just gonna want to make money on something that. And I think a lot of it, and something that the research has shown, is that it's not just money making. Like, people aren't doing this the way we are. We're looking for an edge. People just want to put money essentially where their mouth is, right? It's a symbolic act of putting money into something.
Excellent point.
Want to embody themselves. Like, they want to embody an American voting for Trump, or wanting Trump to win, or wanting Kamala to win, right? And I think most people operate that way anyway when it comes to politics.
I think that's a great point.
Correct.
I bet on the Mets to win the pennant because it's an act of solidarity with the Mets, and I'll be extra happy when they win. It's an emotional thing. Right. So that is fine. If you understand, if you are getting pleasure out of placing that bet, because it's like, buying a souvenir for the team, you feel like it's somehow an act of solidarity with the team, that makes sense. But it is not a rational approach to being a profitable investor. I don't buy stock in Dow Chemical because I want to have a Dow pennant on my wall. I buy stock because I think I don't buy stock in Dow Chemical, but that if you buy stock in something, it's because you think that the stock is underpriced. So. All right. Well, presuming the world is still around with your doomer bias, maybe we'll start to turn to, we haven't checked in on the Texas Senate race. That might be interesting to do. Or maybe we'll check in on the Republican and Democratic primaries. All right.
Whatever it is, it'll be good.
All right, Mike, how can everyone help us out?
So Amir's going to talk to you about the social medias, but we really like to get some engagement from the audience. So one of the ways you can get in contact with us is to email admin@ubkguys.com. And if you pose a question or a topic, we'll be happy to discuss it on the air with gratitude.
Absolutely.
Universal Basic Kalshi Gal. McKenna, how can you help us out?
You can send us money. You can leave a tip. I'm sorry. I shouldn't joke. We don't have a tip link. Yeah, you can listen, subscribe.
Amir, where can they do those things?
We actually have a TikTok now. So we have YouTube, Spotify,
Oh, no.
and a TikTok, believe it or not. So go to all those different platforms, whichever one you're doom scrolling on the most. Make sure to follow us on there.
And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you rate the podcast, that's really helpful. And if you're watching on YouTube, having done this many times myself, sometimes I watch and I don't like and subscribe, but it actually helps us a ton. All right. Thank you, gang. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
Bye.
Universal Basic Kalshi Guys was created and is hosted by Michael Horahan and Evan Mandery. Our producer is Amir Rasulov. Our theme song is Passing Trains by Nathan Eklund. You can follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram at UBK Guys, or email us at admin@ubkguys.com. The content on Universal Basic Kalshi Guys is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute trading, financial, or investment advice. Nothing discussed on this show should be construed as a recommendation to buy or sell contracts on any prediction market. Trading on prediction markets involves real financial risk, and you could lose money. Always do your own research and consider your own financial situation before trading. The hosts may and often do hold positions in markets discussed on the show. Views expressed by guests are their own and do not reflect the positions of the show or its hosts. If you or someone you know is struggling with problem gambling, free and confidential help is available 24/7 through the National Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org.